Welcome everybody. It is Business Monday here at GoLocal Live Small Biz segment with our friends over at Commerce RI. We have the guru of all gurus, the woman who can make your life delightful as an entrepreneur or incredibly complex, Liz Tanner, Director of the Department of Business Regulation. Just think of that name. Department of Business Regulation, enough to send chills up the average entrepreneur.
I think it's awesome. I think it sounds great.
It's an awesome name. And it's scary, isn't it? Like you can just...
Powerful.
Powerful. Let's jump into it. Lots going on in business in Rhode Island, lots of new initiatives. Let's jump into maybe one of the most complex, one of the most controversial, the issue of the legalization of marijuana here in Rhode Island. The governor put it in her budget. Legislative leaders have had a number of comments on it. Tell me what Department of Business Regulation is doing on that issue.
So DBR, much sounds less scary when I say DBR, right?
DBR.
DBR sounds much less scary.
Sounds like CBD.
Well, CBD, THC, I'm learning all the acronyms. We've been overseeing marijuana since the initial medical marijuana was implemented, 2006, I believe. And we're super excited to try to make this next initiative to push forward for our adult use marijuana, not just adult use marijuana, but there's some changes to the medical marijuana law. There's the CBD, as you say,
right.
Super hot term that's out there, as well as hemp. There's a lot in the package. A lot of people will say it's all mixed together. It's in the same package, but it's separated out in different sections. The governor really doesn't want to do this, but we have our neighbors right there next to us. You can get marijuana 200 feet over the border in Fall River. You can go 10 minutes into Uxbridge. So we are hoping to propose, or we are proposing, the most restrictive and responsible framework for marijuana usage in the country. So there's restrictions on all sorts of things to try to make it easier for us as a state to allow this and accept this. But really what it comes down to is needing the resources. We need the dollars, the resources. These kids are going to have it available to them. We want to make sure there's standards on packaging so that they know it's not for them. We want to make sure that there's public health and safety programs in the schools for the kids to learn that marijuana usage before age 25 is bad, right? So we want to make sure they understand that. We need resources for our state and local police so that they can take care of when they pull over someone who is suspected being high of marijuana. They know drug recognition so that they have that expertise, and any other resources for prevention and abuse and everything else that goes along with it. So we are aiming to be the most restrictive and regulated in the country, trying to get ready for this, because you can start like this, and you can start like this. So we're starting like this. We want to loosen things up because it's not so bad. That's a little different. But we don't want to start like this because then it's really hard to pull it back in. So we're starting with very tightly controlled, and we'll see what happens from there.
Very complex issue, lots of unintended consequences. John Hickenlooper, who was the governor of Colorado, as they were the first state in the country, says, hey, listen, there's lots of complexities of this. GoLocal's been out in Portland, Oregon when they went legalized. Very interesting. Oregon is a big employer state. We're a small business state. They're a big employer state. Intel and Nike and Adidas and companies like that. Of the top 20 companies, largest employers in Oregon, all of them had mandatory drug testing after the legalization. How do you balance all those things? And are we really going to be ready for all of this?
I got to tell you, the business community reached out to us early and fast, and as you know, I have enjoyed communicating often with them.
Yep.
And they said to us, what's going to happen? What's this going to look like? So we spend a lot of time talking to the other states. So we have seen what they've done well, what they haven't done well. We try to implement their best practices. But we also listen to what our local guys told us. And what they said was, let us have control over what we can do with our employees. So we did. So we've actually made changes based on their feedback, that as long as a workplace has a policy, they can fulfill and follow up through on that policy. So not unlike
General Dynamics building nuclear submarines wants to make sure that their welder is not impaired.
Well, they're a different example too, because they're federal government. So they absolutely...
They're a federal contractor.
Right, federal contractor. So federal contractor, absolutely, they've had those laws in place for a long time. It's not like marijuana is just going to start showing up in June if we pass this law, right? I mean, it's already been here. So, but it's been more for the smaller businesses who have said, what can my policy be? So we listened to them and we made changes based on what they said, and we think that they are pretty happy with how that's come out.
League of Cities and Towns have still continued to voice some opposition to the legislation?
We've had 2 forums now with some municipal leaders, and they've said to us, what can and can't we do? So there's a couple things that they're not super happy about. One is the ability to control their own destiny. Mm-hmm. So the municipal leaders want to control their own destiny. The way the law's written, or the bill's written now, it gives the local citizens some control of their own destiny. However, a municipality can still ban it outright if they want to, but that will be an issue to be decided.
Does that have to be voter initiative? Is that 5149? What's the criteria for Cranston to make a decision that they don't want any stores in there?
Ultimately it depends on what the bill comes out to be,
Yeah.
But as of it is right now, they do have some local voice. I suspect that there might be a lot of discussions with the legislature to try to make some changes there, so we'll see how it comes out.
Let's jump over to blockchain. Obviously, one of the most explosive technologies now being embraced from everybody from IBM to most everybody dealing with moving information is creating another degree of protection. And the term of art, which has a lot of definitions to it, is called blockchain. The ability to sort of protect data and move it in a way that gives it some greater level of confidence that it's not going to be manipulated. Rhode Island had a conference last summer in partnership with Commerce RI. And,
thank you very much, and you as well.
Yeah, a lot of significant players around the country were here in Rhode Island, and that's led to your leadership in developing some thinking about what's the best practice in protecting everybody's involvement in blockchain. Give us a little overview.
Yeah. So I think I was actually one of the few people who had even heard of blockchain a couple of years ago. I was interested in seeing what other governments were doing, so as we were looking to figure out how to make it easier in Rhode Island, we realized that there's not a lot of states in the country that are doing it very well. So we said, let's go international. So I've spent a lot of time looking at what the other countries do, and a lot of them are using this blockchain thing. And so once we kind of figured out what it was, and then by coincidence we had the summit come, we have talked to, somewhere between 50 and 100 blockchain people, whether it's a hobby or a full-time job for them or they're experts, and to say, what does Rhode Island need to do to become blockchain friendly? And I have to tell you, at the end of the day, it ended up very little. Because we actually already had laws that were pretty open. A lot of states like Wyoming, they've had to change their laws to allow for cryptocurrency and for blockchain electronic transactions. We didn't have to change anything. So blockchain and crypto are fully allowable. One thing that we did, that we do need to change, and Representative Shikarchi just put forward a bill, last week I think he put it forward, the virtual currency licensing bill, was if you wanted to do cryptocurrency within the state of Rhode Island, you would have had to get 2 different licenses. So we basically said, let's just keep those licenses there, and we'll create one new license just for this industry. So that's what we're looking at doing, is creating one new license just for this industry. And that's what they want, right? Like, some people do want to be regulated. Yeah. So especially when it's a new industry, the number one thing they asked us for was clarity.
Right.
We want to know what the rules are. We want to be regulated. We want to be, somewhat legitimized. And so we said, okay, this is the way we can do it. So in addition to the new license type, you can do the electronic transactions, you can do the cryptocurrency, and one thing we get asked a lot about is the need for regulatory sandbox. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that term, but essentially it's the ability for regulators like me to have some flexibility. So if a brand new business type comes, we can pigeonhole them into some sort of licensing type and regulation, or we can say, you know what? Let's wait and see how you affect the consumer. How is there damage done? Is there not damage done? Do you ultimately get to this box, or are we going to create a new box for you, or do you not need to be regulated at all? So we actually have that discretion, and so we don't need to create a sandbox.
So we've talked about 2 emerging industries that are now taking place, and is there, Saul Kaplan and I have had the conversation about scooters, and when scooters were zooming up in front of us when having conversations, there was no regulation. Now there's a little more regulation. Technology and innovation and entrepreneurship is way ahead of government. And is there a way for a department like yours to both meet the needs of protecting Rhode Islanders, their financial interests, their business interests, but also be responsive to innovation without having to wait for a General Assembly session. Oh, the speaker got into a fight with the Senate president. All the bills died this year, and Rhode Island's now 2 years behind. Whatever the dynamics of politics are, is there a way to start thinking about regulating emerging technology without constantly having to go back and amend Chapter 44, blah, 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 of the general laws?
Well, at DBR we do have that, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the beauty of it, is DBR has this discretion, and I think most agency directors do. And you'd have to look at each agency to determine what the laws say.
Is an emergency reg?
We do emergency regs.
Yep.
The laws, of course, are much harder to pass.
Right.
But you do see things that get submitted at the very end of the session, and sometimes it's because something new has just come up, right?
Right.
So, but we're a part-time legislature, and that's the way we operate. But we do emergency regs, and we do make emergency changes to reflect things. But Rhode Island tends to be far more flexible and nimble than most people think we do. It's just a matter of getting to the right person to have that conversation. If you just call, 1-800-government, you might not get that right answer. You should go through the Commerce Department to make sure that you can be shown to have a valid idea that has some merit that we can try to put forward.
From you as a regulator, because you've got a complexity of roles, where do you see all this flushing out? Do you look down the pipeline 6, 12, 24 months and say, gosh, I wish I had tool X so that I didn't need to be hamstrung, or I could be more flexible and be able to be more quick reactive and more protective of the marketplace?
It depends on what the people have to say, right? So when we start getting a lot of complaints in a certain area or phone calls asking for certain things, that's when we know we need to make a change, right? So I spent a lot of time out on the road talking to people to say, what is it that's bothering you? What do you find annoying? What drives you crazy? And it's not like they're going to come back to me and say, it's regulation 1, 2, 3, 4. They come back and go, I had a phone call with this place and it gave me a hard time. Then it's up to us, and we have our state's ombudsman who will go and figure out what that crazy thing was.
Right.
And we go from there and try to figure out how to make it better. So we try to make it better for that person, but then also try to fix it permanently.
Let's talk about trying to make it better. E-permitting. Give us an update on e-permitting. I did ask you to bring in all of the regulations that you have eliminated during your tenure.
I couldn't carry them all.
How long have you been the director of the Department of Business Regulation?
Just over a year, almost a year and a half. So November.
Year and a half. And how many regulations have you sliced and diced? Kind of John Belushi summarized style, right?
Well, I can tell you the Office of Regulatory Reform
Yes.
sliced and diced about 32%, I think, of the regulations.
32%.
That came out in, now they're all readily available on the Secretary of State's website.
Not
So
the
when-
old ones, just the good ones.
All the good ones, all
Yeah,
the good
great.
ones, all the good ones. The most famous of which is the mimosa regulation.
The mimosa regulation.
mimosa
This could make
regulation.
the headline. What, pray tell, is
Yes.
the mimosa regulation?
So there,
Is this a sitting, existing regulation, or have you eliminated the mimosa regulation?
well, we're not going to get rid of mimosas.
No,
So,
no, that's clear. That's an edict from the governor. I believe it was in her state of the state.
Something like that,
Right.
yes. No, the mimosa regulation was, it was very unclear in the current regulations whether you could serve liquor before noon on Sundays. And so a lot of people didn't serve liquor before noon on Sundays because they thought they were going to get in trouble.
But I've got to have a mimosa on a Sunday morning at brunch,
So
or a Bloody Mary.
So we changed the regulation so that it's very clear that you can serve alcohol before noon
Okay.
on Sundays.
And the mimosa regulation, now that has provided clarity for mimosas, does it also cover critical consumption like Bloody Marys?
I'm assuming so. I only know that we call it the mimosa regulation, so I'm assuming that's been okay. So
Talk about e-permitting. What's happened? What is available online? What do you still need to work on?
So e-permitting, we're up to 28 of our 39 municipalities. We have 2 more coming on in the next few months. Block Island was waiting for their internet usage to really come up, and Warren is coming on as well. So we're really excited to hit the 30 mark. It's been really neat to see because in addition to having fire and building on, and don't forget some people have been on for several years now,
Right.
we are now, it's been growing. So solar permits are on there. We'll be putting the food truck permits on there. So we're starting to use it for more and more things. And also in April, State Tech Magazine is doing an article on the state of Rhode Island because we are the first state in the country where you have permitting relationships between the state and the municipal government. So when you apply for something in the town that you live in, it connects to the state and you can have that relationship go that way. So it's been a huge success. People love it. It's very transparent because you can see where your application is, who it's with, and when it went there. You can communicate via email during the during the review process. And the greatest part is I had a friend of mine who said, oh, I got to take off a couple hours of work this morning so I can go and fill out the paperwork for the permit. I said, pull up your phone. You can do it on your phone. You can do it at night. You can do it on the weekend. So it's a huge time saver for both contractors, citizens, and the municipalities, and it's very transparent. You can see where you're at. So it's been
Is there any chance you could take over the Department of Motor Vehicles? Not kidding. Let's talk about just sort of changing the perception of regulatory structure in Rhode Island. I think if you asked most small business people, we hear it on this segment, what's been your experience in dealing with the regulatory structure? It's not always at the state level, often it's at the municipal level. The perception is no one cares. Yeah. The experience is not user-friendly, it's not customer-friendly when there's an interaction. How do we change, A, the behavior, the tools, and the overall perception?
Well, you know, I think I said this the last time I was on here, but it was a long time ago. One of the greatest things that Governor Raimondo did is we brought back Amico. Yeah. Amico does customer service training. Right. So we lost track after 4,000 employees. Yep. Because we started doing train the trainers, and Amico can only do it for free for so long. Yep. The customer service complaints have gone down so much.
Is that at the state level or the municipal level?
State level, state level. However, we did do an initiative with the municipalities. 27 of them, they did have customer service training done by Roger Williams University, actually. So we've done a huge push for customer service.
I'm not sure that one's stuck.
So, well, I said 27 the municipalities. Maybe you've only been experiencing a little over 10.
One of our reporters talked to the town clerk in Narragansett the other day, and the woman was responsive, friendly, and got the document to us almost immediately. It was literally like stop the presses. It was such an unusual situation rather than what should be the norm of asking for something for the public purpose.
Well, what I say is, how long ago was your bad experience? Right? They say it takes 2 to 3 times to have a good experience for you to forget about your bad experience. You know, while we're not perfect, the municipalities aren't perfect, the state government's not perfect, you're going to run into some bad eggs every once in a while. Yeah. It's improved a lot. I don't hear the volume and the depth of complaints that we used to.
The DMV is definitely the one we get hit on the most. We went down there's 400 people in line oftentimes. If you see the photos on Facebook in the morning, on almost any given morning when the doors open, there are literally hundreds of people in line. It's not a good use of the taxpayers' time and energy. And other states have beaten this system. It just doesn't seem that complex that we can't leap forward a couple steps.
I have to say, I've heard of some good experiences, right? So my secretary herself, she had.
But shouldn't they all be good experiences? I mean,
you got to take it one at a time, right? But she had a great experience.
This is not we're not going to Hopkins to get brain surgery. We're getting our cars registered. We're renewing our licenses. Maybe there's an issue with a VIN number. I don't know.
Well, it's funny. You talk about when we went out and asked the people, we said, what is it that really bothers you? Yeah. And everybody says it's the regulations. I can tell you, with the exception of the mimosa regulation, it's rarely the actual regulation. It's very often bad laws or bad processes. It takes too long to do the paperwork, or the paperwork's too lengthy, or it's bad customer service.
Sometimes the regulations are old.
Old and unclear.
Old, but old, just dated. There was a regulation on what should be taxed that interfaced with advertising agents. This is about 10 years ago. It was talking about the terms of art and the regulation over at taxation were terms that had not been used in advertising in 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, let me give you an example. We're doing another small business friendliness omnibus package this year. Last year we had some really fun, cool things in there. This year it's not as exciting, but we are repealing the hide and leather statutes.
The hide and leather statute is, you're pushing for that to be removed. And what does the hide and leather statute do?
It requires the municipalities to have a hide and leather inspector and charge them $1 per hide review. So that's one of the things we're looking to get rid of. We're also trying to get rid of some more notarizations, some more fees, minor small fees, a couple other things, right? So there's not a lot of really, we had frozen desserts last year. We had some really, really fun ones last year. But it is proposing to get rid of some smaller things.
Yeah, that hide inspection is critical to our cattle industry here in Rhode Island.
Someone just needs to go through it and clean it up. But we've also done some really great things in the building space. So if you recall, last year, the fire and building departments were merged together. Right. So that's been super exciting to have the two of them together because it's allowed us to do 2 different things. When we talk to businesses and the community members about how to build a building and do construction, the two biggest complaints were the inconsistency of the inspectors. Right? So West Warwick might say one thing, Warwick says another.
100%.
Or
We hear that all the
fire
time.
says something, building says another. Starting in January, and now every quarter, there was required training for both fire and building inspectors in the same room to get trained on the consistency of the code so that they can all be brought up to speed on the same thing. So that's been super exciting, and that just started in January. And the other thing is, one of the biggest complaints I heard was about the handrail. Did you ever hear my story about the handrail?
No, we do not know the story of the handrail.
So the handrail going up the stairs from your basement,
Yeah.
right? So matter of fact, if you have a lot of holes on your handrail,
Yeah.
you're going to understand why now.
Okay.
Because the fire code says that that handrail has to be 2 inches away from the wall because they want their glove to be in there so that they can run up and down the stairs if there's a fire.
Okay.
The building code says
Yeah.
it has to be 1 3/4 inches away from the wall. And they want it that way because they don't want your arm to fall through because you don't want to get hurt, right?
Sure.
So that has been a problem in the state of Rhode Island forever and a day. So we got the fire in the room, we got the building in the room, we said, let's talk about the codes. And we cleared up a bunch of other ones, but this one's probably the easiest and funnest to understand. And we said, okay, 2 inches or 1 3/4, what's it going to be? We looked at the background and where they got their information from. The fire code is based off of a national standard. The building code is based off of the federal law versus the ADA. So we said, okay, federal law wins. From now on in Rhode Island, it's 1 3/4, and now we're relaying that out through all this training that we're doing. So one of the biggest problems that the contractors would have is now resolved because we got 2 people in a room and merged these departments. So
And it only took us 20 or 30 years to do that.
We got them in a room, we're hashing out. Come on, I mean, give us credit. We're trying
There's
to
a
get some
W.
things done here.
It's
So
a W.
It's a W for us. So yes, so we finally approved those codes. The changes are officially made, and now it's 1 3/4, and it should never be a problem again.
Now, if I'm a business owner and I'm sitting in my office watching this discussion and say, oh my God, she's missing all the most important ones, like blah, 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 blah. What should somebody do to sort of pass along their frustration, their suggestions on other improvements that should be implemented? Who should they call, and how do they get in touch with the right person?
A couple things.
Sure.
So first, I welcome the opportunity to come to see organizations. Right?
Yep.
It's really helpful to me to go to an event with professions where they can tell me what it is their problems are.
Right.
So I would love to come and have a conversation or a meeting, whatever you want to do. We also have DBR. You can
Yep.
just call us at DBR, Department of Business Regulation.
What's the phone number?
To come directly to me, it's 462-9650 is the main number, I believe. But the best place and the easiest number to remember is probably call the Commerce Corporation.
Okay.
So it's 278-9100, and that's the hotline that you can call, and people will be able to direct you out to the right place.
And that's answered by a human being
By a
who
human
is
being
located in Rhode
Who
Island,
is
not in
located
Bolivia.
in Rhode Island, yes.
Excellent. Liz Tanner, thanks so much. Always an education
Thank
when
you.
you are
Thank you.
on. Feel much better about the legal consumption of mimosas now. I'm feeling better about marijuana and also transferring all my new marijuana funds via blockchain. So we have covered it all.
There you go.
We'll be back at 4 o'clock with Richard Lappin, the owner of the Regency Plaza, not talking about the Regency Plaza per se, but talking about a big education initiative in Rhode Island. We'll see you back at 4 o'clock.